Welcome, everybody. I am excited for today's conversation. I am joined by Cortney Matthews, VP of Client Success at Sandia Insights Clarity 360. On Sandia's team page, it stood out that your mission is helping clients make confident decisions in a world that keeps getting more complex. That's exactly what we want to dig in today, what proactive, structured client success really looks like, and why reactive support quietly drains time, trust, and growth. Really happy we can make this happen today. Courtney, would you just mind talking a little bit more about who you are and what your background has been, whether it's with Sandy Insights or, before that, what's got you to kind of where you're at today?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Kirk. First, I'm excited to be here as well and really looking forward to the conversation. Currently, I am the VP of Client Success at Sandia Insights. We also have Clarity 360, which is a part of the Sandia umbrella. And within Clarity 360, we do third-party risk management. We run a SaaS platform and help our clients grow their TPRM programs, specifically in kind of the cybersecurity space. We have other domains as well. And so in the private capital market side, getting into, operational risk, sustainability, reporting, financial risk, all of those things. So really all of the risk. And from, obviously now we're Sandia Insights. We used to be a part of Kroll, which is a large consulting global firm. That was great experience as well. And prior to that, I've been in different industries, wholesale, finance, retail. This has been part of my world for the last about 8 years.
Nice. Very cool. I know we were talking a little bit before we started the recording and whatnot, but I kind of wanted to start digging into some of the stuff that you're working with, risk specifically, but also churn. When I think of churn, I usually think of that as a symptom. In your experience, what have you seen as root causes and which ones get ignored because you don't show up? They don't show up, whether in a ticketing system or just don't show up. How else it's usually processed?
Great question. So typically, being in the client success role, many of the times, and it's probably something that you don't necessarily think about, there's behavioral signals. So, reduced engagement, especially with the technology platform that we have, like they're not logging in as much, or, if you've got some form of a system that they can actually log into, you can use some of those metrics to see how often are they actually utilizing your systems, your services. But definitely the behavioral signals are, I would say, the ones to watch for specifically, and those are going to be your early ones. So reduced engagement, longer response gaps, right? Sending them an email, asking them questions, they're not getting back to you, you're having to follow up, they're missing meetings that you've got scheduled, or they're rescheduling over and over and over again. Those don't always mean that churn is coming, but those are some of the telltale signs. They have shifts in their tone, so they get to a point of being a little more transactional in nature and not as collaborative. Even bringing in new stakeholders and saying things like, we're here to explore options or to learn a little bit more about what you're doing, but maybe sometimes in the background they're actually looking at other things as well, right? And trying to kind of compare and contrast what their next move is. So from a behavioral standpoint, like those are the things that typically put red flags in my mind.
Okay.
On the operational side, there's a spike in tickets, escalations. If you've got SLAs and things like that, then you can see, what are your satisfaction ratings? Are they asking the same questions over and over again? Having kind of some new vendor inquiries. Obviously, all of these things then kind of escalate to the strategic and kind of the leadership levels within that specific organization. Are there leadership changes that are happening? Budget issues, freezes, restructuring? What are the regulatory pressures? Are there things that they are having to react to from a regulatory standpoint that maybe they don't feel that you're prepared to guide them in? So those are kind of the types of things that I see. And just the little breadcrumbs that kind of sprinkle in, but over time matter.
So as you start seeing more and more breadcrumbs, do you specifically try to go after those issues then, especially as a client success, the vice president, or like what's kind of your approach? What's your goal when you start to see churn?
So I typically like to stay in front of our clients as much as possible. So as I start to see kind of engagement slide or things like that, I will actually try and schedule some meetings. Typically with Majority of the clients, when you're on calls, there could be 4, 5, 6, 7 people, right? Like there's a group
Mhm.
you're typically in front of.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily like to, get into those types of conversations as the larger group, but there are typically, relationships that I've built with
Mhm.
specific folks.
Mhm.
So having the opportunity to discuss one-on-one with them and kind of just understand from their standpoint, what are they feeling? What are they seeing? Are we meeting their needs? Are there things that are coming up in the future strategically that they're kind of keeping an eye open towards? Just being in contact with them as much as possible to help get in front of, some of those surprises, if you will.
Okay.
That's my take on it.
Would you be willing to share a success story of where you saw maybe a specific client? You don't have to go into specific details, but a specific client was going down that route and you're like, "Oh, let's redirect them really quick."
hmm Yeah. So it's hard when you have a larger set of clients, it's hard to make the time to, touch base with everyone and make sure that you're understanding where they're at, what they're feeling. And so myself personally, like I can pretty easily kind of let some things slide under the radar. So in the past years, there's been times where it's like, well, shoot, I haven't actually talked to these people for months. That doesn't feel good for me just personally.
Mhm.
I want to know how you're feeling. What are the emotions? And so being very intentional about scheduling time. And before I am off of a call, I will schedule the next meeting just to touch base. It doesn't need to be a 30-minute hour conversation, right?
Mhm.
15 minutes just to check in and how are things going? How can we help? What's going well? Where are we falling down? Maybe being very honest and upfront and transparent, I think does a lot for building those relationships and making sure that you're doing your best for that client.
Okay. Kind of a unrelated question. You talked about how you like to reach out and ask how people are feeling. I don't know. I guess me coming from the military, some people joke, and it's not necessarily true, but I didn't issue you your feelings, so I don't care about them, right? That can sometimes be a mentality in the military. It's not always, and it's not everywhere. But for me as an outsider that's coming into this environment and hearing like, hey, what are your feelings? At the end of the day, though, we are dealing with humans. And, someone shared this message with me a long time ago that we are emotional beings trying to do logical things. We're not logical beings with emotions. We're emotional beings that try to do logical things, right? As we're talking about feelings, right? How much do you feel? How much do you notice? How much do you think that the way that people are feeling, that the emotions that people are dealing with have an impact in the relationships, in the success, in the way that you work with a company versus just being able to, hey, the company's doing great. We're doing good stuff together, but you said something I don't like it, so I'm leaving. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm a very empathetic person by nature.
Okay.
Maybe that's the female in me. I don't know. The relationships that I build with our clients, I like to be, like I said, transparent, honest.
Mm-hmm.
I understand there are many times where you come across a challenge and maybe the way that they feel about something isn't the way that we as a company would run the business, or it's going to challenge maybe our idea of how we see success in this specific situation. But I also feel like the way that someone feels about something, like there's value and there's opportunity to learn from that,
Okay.
right or wrong, but being able to understand a little bit more about where they're coming from or in the way that they feel about a certain situation, report, what have you. The feeling aspect helps me understand where they're coming from more. It prepares me to then be hopefully proactive. And in that situation, sometimes you're a little bit reactive to those ideas, but then coming together in a partnership to figure out how to get to the next step, right? How are we going to close the gaps if we disagree on something? Because you feel one way and I feel a different way. How are we going to kind of merge and work together in order to make it a success, whatever that looks like. So it's not black and white. There's quite a bit of gray in
Yeah,
there.
that makes sense. It really does. Being able to get people to the table and talk and share, as people can understand each other. I think there's a lot of value in that and at least understand where the other person's coming from. right? Because if it's just, hey, I want to go this direction and we're going this direction, it's just like, what? Even if you necessarily don't agree with something, you feel differently about it, but you can at least understand each other. There's a lot of value, I think, that can also benefit a lot of teams and partnerships, whatever that partnership might look like.
Yeah. And I think, hearing you say that too, there are instances still where you still do what they ask, right? Even though you might not agree. But if they're willing and if they're open to communication and the understanding, then by all means, I like that's kind of my first instinct. But if I'm not feeling like reciprocated in the openness, I'm not going to go there either.
Okay, that's fair. So another question that I have for you is, you're dealing with churn, you're dealing with everything that's happening. Sometimes things are scalable and data driven, sometimes they're not. What are 1 to 2 proactive habits or routines that make the biggest difference for retention and customer confidence?
Yeah. I love this question, but I feel like there's not one specific thing that jumps out at me. I've already talked about kind of the health of the client, right? Like where are they
Mm-hmm.
at? While there is that client facing aspect of understanding how they're feeling, I think that there's a lot of value in the internal team coming together for, I'll call it client health reviews, right? To kind
Oh, okay.
share and I would typically, I think about these things like on a monthly or every other month basis, just to keep your finger on the pulse a little bit
Yep.
on all of your clients, right? Like what's improving, what do you feel like is slipping, what are we doing hopefully proactively before things become a problem. So trying to kind of flush out some of those things to make slight adjustments to be better in the future. That's one thing that has been helpful in my own experience. And the other piece is quarterly business reviews. A lot of times it's real easy to get sucked into what we've done, like from the last review to the one that you're currently having.
Mm-hmm.
I like to really try and focus those types of meetings forward. What's our future look like over the next 90 days? Business priorities, making sure the roadmaps are aligned, the benchmarks, what movement has happened in that regard, risk and issue forecasting, taking those pieces and being able to show that you guys are growing together. And the partnership aspect that I've referenced, it is a partnership. It's not all one-sided. We, as the vendor, we're here to make you successful. I want to deliver you value, and I need to figure
Mm-hmm.
out what value looks like for you and how we can continue to show that value as we move forward. I know a lot of people also struggle in the onboarding space, bringing on a new client. What does that look? Especially in organizations that are growing fast, like you've got a lot of new clients coming into the mix. If you don't have good kind of processes and procedures as to what that onboarding phase looks like, I think that can quickly take you down a spiral. And then you're starting out that engagement with a new client in a rocky manner. So that's one thing that I do think is very important as well.
What's your dog's name?
Yogi,
Yogi. Hi, Yogi.
11-month-old Bernese mountain dog.
Yep.
And he's
Very
about
cool.
90 pounds.
Very cool.
Yeah. Sorry.
No worries.
The boys are just,
Not only for you, but also for the podcast, people that are listening to the podcast, right? As I am, as I'm talking to these individuals, the truth is that we're dealing with people in their everyday lives. And, sometimes there's a dog in the background and sometimes there's coughing in the background. And you know what? That's okay. Because that just proves, I think one of the things that's really important to me, and I know this is slightly off topic, and we'll get back to some of the key points that you were just talking about in a second.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, like every single one of us is human. And I think that it's appropriate to show that people are human and that we make mistakes and, life isn't perfect. And so and I will leave this in the podcast, but the truth of the matter is okay, there's a dog barking in the background. Okay, cool. There's a dog barking. That's part of life and it's okay. And no matter what happens, I'm happy that I can still share this moment with Cortney and have her as part of this show. So you were talking about before, yeah, Yogi barked. Yep, proactive routines. Thank you. And no, I like it. I think that, as I mean, and I guess to some degree, it kind of goes along with the point of what we were just talking about, right? That it's having that pulse, it's reaching out and having that connection with the clients and the customers, and just being like, hey, we get it, but let's work through this, work on this, let's figure it out together.
I think along those lines is for the stakeholder executive sponsors and whatnot, making sure that they are informed of what's happening, how are we progressing, helping them understand not only we're starting here, but our goal is X or Y or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What does that path to success look like to the best of your ability at that moment in time, right? Things are going to shift and they're going to change as you go, but being flexible, having the ability to evolve and be open to that evolution as you move forward and not necessarily stuck in previous processes and procedures and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I think that's very important too, especially today.
Yeah, especially today. Well, I think I have one or two more questions. You as vice president and as a leader in your industry and in your company, for those people that are looking, aspiring, and wanting to grow, or other leaders that are also trying to learn from each other, if they're listening to this and they want to reduce churn this quarter, what would be one proactive change you recommend they implement immediately?
I would say I can pick one.
No, you can pick two or
Um,
five.
or a lot.
I mean, maybe not one. What are some things, like if someone's like, oh man, Courtney, she obviously knows her stuff. I'm Joe Bob and I'm a IT service leader. I'm trying to minimize churn. Just wish I had a couple of recommendations. What
Yeah,
would you recommend I start immediately?
on the churn piece specifically, I would say that honestly, like the breadcrumbs
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
churn is coming. The majority of the time, the first things you're going to see relates to behaviors, right?
Okay.
So those relationships that you have, that is the thing I would start with. I would start with the person. Yes, there are processes, there are SLAs, there's multiple
Mm-hmm.
things that make up the larger picture.
Yes.
But I would start with the behaviors and at least start having conversations and building understanding more about that relationship. I think also though very quickly behind that are the metrics and the things that you see
Mm-hmm.
that you can get data on. What are things specific to that client that maybe are contributing to those behaviors? Is it a function of tickets and questions that they have? Is your team being responsive to their needs? A lot of times it could be something as small as that. They don't feel supported
Mm-hmm.
or they feel like they're looking to grow in a certain space that your team doesn't necessarily have all the answers to, right? How can you show them that you are willing to make adjustments to better support in, that area? That's the two top things. I would obviously start with the behaviors, but if you have the ability to see the underlying causes of some of those behaviors, then I would very quickly get on that stuff and understand, how you can better support in those spaces.
Okay. I like it.
As soon as their confidence in you as the team that's supporting them, if that starts to erode, then over time, that's a really hard thing to build back up, right? So if you can keep that trust in the fact that, hey, we're here to support you, we're here to help, we're here to grow with you and help guide where you need to go, that goes a long ways.
Another question that I have is in regards to artificial intelligence. How are you using AI as the VP of client success?
Yeah. So I use AI daily, hourly. It's my own little team, It can be extremely helpful, right?
Mm-hmm.
As I think about it, what are the tasks? What are the things that I'm doing on a daily basis that I can be more efficient at by using those tools? And it can even be things like identifying patterns. If you think about it in kind of the client success or support tickets or
Mm-hmm.
that space, like what are the patterns that we can detect by using, AI to see if
Mm-hmm.
there's some correlation here, right? What are the things that, we're seeing over and over again as it relates to, even client calls? There's a million different recorders that you can use that will summarize the meeting insights into kind of an AI generated summarization. It's got key points, who said what,
Mm-hmm.
an item. When you're in a meeting with a client, you want to be engaged with that client. You don't want to be jotting notes down on the side. So being able to be intentional about your time together, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is very important. And that's an area where we found it helpful just to take those minute tasks away, being able to put that into a board that tells you and showcases, okay, these are the things that we need to do for this specific client, when you can assign roles based off of that, when's it due, all
Mm-hmm.
those things. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are still a little leery and scared of AI, which rightfully so, I think. But it can also do a lot of really cool things that I think many people maybe don't realize yet, or they're kind of just getting into understanding
Mm-hmm.
the power of it. Those are some of the things that I typically use it for. We're focused right now on a big push in LLMs and how are we going to bring that into, our ecosystem as a platform. It can be extremely helpful in parsing evidence, documentation, and citations of such. Because typically with our platform, it's a third-party risk management solution. The vendors, the respondents, they're logging in, they are completing surveys, they're adding documentation, being able to utilize AI and large language models to help not only answer some of the questions based on the documentation that you give, makes things more efficient there on the upfront side. Then as that flows kind of through the pipeline into our client's ecosystem and what they're looking at, being able to showcase very quickly for the analysts or whomever's looking at results, just have more confidence in what is being submitted. We know that a human can't go through 10 documents of 150 pages each and understand and remember, the citation of X, Y, and Z, to utilize kind of the systems and the technology to help speed up that process and to have
Mm-hmm.
confidence in the data that's being submitted on the client side. Those are some areas where it's been really helpful. Still, you don't want to rely 100% on what it's telling you. You still need
No.
that human interface, having that human expert who is able to look at what it's saying to say, hey, we're proposing that you answer option C on this question because of these documents and this information. Whoever's reviewing that can say, yep, I agree. That's great. We do that. Or no, I should probably select option A. Still giving them the power to say those things and have that be part of the workflows is helpful. Even on the client side, identifying the gaps, what are the recommended next steps? The platform already supports those types of things, but if you are the one that's making those decisions and walking it through the workflow and remediation and all of those different areas, being able to escalate and more efficiently make it through some of those processes is extremely helpful.
Heck yeah. So 2 more questions, and I'm going to ask them simultaneously. First off, question number 1, what is your favorite part of your job? What do you love about your job? And then 2, what would be your final words to those that are listening to the podcast?
My favorite part of my job and the role I have now of Sandia Insights is I have the opportunity to touch all aspects of the business, and there is never a dull moment. We're building
Okay.
technology, things change quickly.
Yes.
But having the ability to think outside the box and have like one specific thing that I really love, but like my clients and those people that I work with day in and day out, like the relationships, that's a huge piece for me. That fills my bucket. Talking to you today, Kirk, this fills my bucket. So having those personal
Thank you.
relations,
Glad I can help.
a very important thing, at least for me personally. To your second question, what would be my parting words? I think that we're in a really interesting time, but it's very exciting. The fact of technology, AI, and the opportunity to utilize and learn those tools and grow businesses. I feel like we're kind of in this mode of shifting even how people work, right? For me, that's very exciting. My parting recommendations would be to be cautious, but also don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone and learn and have the opportunity to grow with the way the world is changing. And B, think about it as much as you can. We're all kind of innovators in a way that we are experiencing something right now that in 20 years, the world's going to look way different. If
So
you just kind
much.
of subset yourself in this little box and the points on the graph, there's a lot of opportunity here. And I think that's really exciting time.
It sure is. Courtney, thank you so much for taking the time today to sit down and chat with me. I really do find this very valuable. I've appreciated the opportunity to hear your insight, for you to share the information with me about churn and the way that you process it, the highs and lows of the job, the way that you're utilizing artificial intelligence. That's exciting and that's fun stuff. And I am very grateful for the time that we've had today to be able to learn a little bit more. And I'm excited to share this information with those that will be following up with the podcast later. So thank you very much and looking forward to continued conversations.
Awesome. Thank you, Kirk. I appreciate your time. It was great.
Thanks for tuning in today. Please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who'd benefit. My goal is simple: have real conversations with people doing meaningful work. If there's a potential guest I should talk to, send the note to the North Forge Intelligence LinkedIn page. I'll see you next time.